And the day I bought it in, I never had stuff that nice. So I was like, dang, this sounds good.
Like it was a whole nother world over here.
Yeah, right. And so I was like, yo, Sarah, put the headphones on. Listen to how this sound. And
Mm.
so she put the headphones on, was like, hey, we should do a podcast. And so, we literally brainstormed for 15 minutes. 15
Mm.
minutes. I'm a diehard Chicagoan. I love everything about Chicago, right? And so that was my angle. She's a dope ass cook. So how can we combine those two? We
Hmm.
figured it out in 15 minutes and had the name down, the concept of it down. When we were recording.
From Harold Washington to Harold's Chicken and everything in between and beyond, SoCHiology is the exploration of Chicago culture, history, legends, stories, and fiction through a myriad of discussions with Chicagoans themselves. SoCHiology awareness test. Time for another SAT. Who was the last Republican mayor of Chicago? Don't Google it. Just listen to the episode. The answer is somewhere in there. And when you hear it, make sure you comment below. And whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on right now, don't forget to share, subscribe, and like. Having said all of that, I'm Twiz Taylor. Welcome back to another episode of SoCHiology. Chicagoans are like everybody else, only more so. Sara and Dario exude that zealousness. They are the co-hosts of 77 Flavors of Chicago, a podcast all about Chicago history, Chicago food, and Chicago culture. On this episode, you're just going to listen to three Chicagoans having a conversation about Chicago. We're going to talk about everything from the stigma behind Chicago in the media, Chicago politics, Chicago food, a bunch of different Chicago facts and history. Also, the inspiration behind Sara and Dario's journey on why they started 77 Flavors and how they just stumbled right into it. So without further ado, let's get right into this conversation with 77 Flavors of Chicago. So I definitely appreciate it, man. Like I'm a big fan of y'all podcast.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Yeah, definitely a big fan. The first episode I think I listened to of y'all's last year was it was the Chatham episode with Black
Oh
People Eat.
yeah.
Yeah, the Chatham episode with Black People Eats, and it was a good conversation y'all had, and like that's what sucked me in because y'all was like speaking all the the words that jump out at me like blockbuster, because y'all was talking a lot about the practice of how the neighborhoods was all white, and then
Right.
how they was getting white people up out of there, bringing black people in, sucking us in,
Right.
Yeah.
and I love stuff like that. Like I'm a huge history buff, and that was the episode that had me hooked on y'all. That was it.
Hey,
That
we
was
like to hear that,
Yeah.
that was it. And I've been a faithful subscriber and listener ever since. And then, it's just dawned on. I'm like, let me just reach out to see if, y'all would be interested in, doing a podcast, so with that being said, we can get right into it. I ain't gonna
Yeah.
take too
Perfect.
much of y'all time today. But like tell us a little bit about y'all background. Like, I've been listening to the podcast, so I'm familiar with some things, but tell the listeners, a little bit about y'all background and what led y'all to start the podcast 77 Flavors.
Yeah. So I'm from the South Side of Chicago, born and raised here. Sarah's from Jordan, and I'm a comedian, right? So I'm a comedian,
Okay.
and I like creating. You know what I mean? I like to make people make people smile. I had a podcast before that I wanted to kind of make like better. Like I wanted to make it better. Like it had dope content, it had all that kind of stuff, but the audio was just trash, right? And so I went and I bought a lot of equipment, expensive equipment, and just
Yeah.
said, I'm going all in,
Mhm.
pushing all the chips in. We're gonna do this thing right. And the day I bought it in, I never had stuff that nice. So I was like, dang, this sounds good.
Like it was a whole nother world over here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so I was like, yo, Sarah, put the headphones on. Listen to how this sound. And
Mm.
so she put the headphones on, was like, hey, we should do a podcast. And so, we literally brainstormed for 15 minutes. 15
Mm.
minutes. I'm a diehard Chicagoan. I love everything about Chicago, right? And so that was my angle. She's a dope ass cook. So how can we combine those two? We
Mhm.
figured it out in 15 minutes and had the name down, the concept of it down. When we were recording, which originally, I don't know if a lot of people know, but originally this was be once every 2 weeks. And, 2 weeks into us starting, we had to pivot quick because people were listening. We were like, all right, let's give them one every week.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and so that's just how it started. You basically was buying equipment for something else.
Yeah. Yeah,
For
it wasn't
something
even for
else.
this.
And he was like, ooh, like,
Yeah,
hold
Literally.
up. So
yeah.
it's kind of like y'all fell into it. I love that. I
Mhm.
We
love that.
For
definitely
sure,
fell
we
into it.
definitely fell into it. Even like it blowing up and people actually recognizing us and listening to it was also kind of luck. I
Right.
mean, the Chicago Tribune food critic found our podcast and listened to it, and he listened to one episode, I think, or
Right.
maybe
Just
two.
1 or 2 episodes. Yeah.
And that's when he wrote the article about us, and
That's all we had out actually. So he listened.
he listened to the 2 episodes we had
Yeah.
after.
Yeah.
And what kind of like caught the attention of most people is that like we record outside. We don't.
Yeah.
And when we started, we were literally recording
Outside,
our second episode was by Navy Pier, and that's what people were like, "Are you actually outside?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're actually sitting outside."
Yeah, right. We're right here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. Not to cut y'all off, but like that's one thing that I love about y'all formula. You know, it's the fact that it's on location and engaging, which is one thing that I strive to do with my podcast as well. You know, it's like, okay, we're Chicagoans, we get that, right?
Right.
But let's get out into Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's get out into Chicago. Let's, show the listeners, the viewers, what Chicago is and what it's about. Because, we understand what the stigma is about our city. We get it.
Yeah,
We understand that, there are some things that, some valid reasons why people may feel that way, but at the same time, that's not the identity of Chicago.
Right, right.
Just how the government and the mainstream media try to paint the identity of Chicago as this. It's like, no, that's like literally a portion of Chicago, just as every big city. But,
Right, exactly.
Chicago is a great city with so many different things that we identify as first before it
Right.
gets to violence and crime. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And food obviously is at the top of that list.
Yeah.
Is at the top of that list.
And honestly, we've been doing this. We've recorded 104 episodes, 105 episodes.
Yeah.
And we have recorded every single episode, for every single episode, we've been in at least one community area and we've visited all 77, and not one time have we experienced anything that was negative. No one has ever bothered us. No one has ever said anything to us. People have been, all over the city, super welcoming, very excited that we're out there and like talking about what's going on. So really, I mean, we haven't experienced that in those 77, in the first 77 weeks, I would say.
And definitely don't want to, make it because we didn't experience it doesn't happen, right? You know what I mean?
Correct,
But like a lot of people, that's outside the city need to understand that this is not an every moment occurrence.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's what we're trying to convey to people is that yes, not only can you walk these streets and like be okay, you know what I mean? You can have fun. Like there's things to do everywhere in the city. There's something to see and be like, oh wow, you know what I mean? Like, so it's really for the people that are outside of the city to understand us more,
or the people that haven't been to these specific community areas. There's so many community areas and organizations in them that are non-governmental that are working so hard to make those community areas more interactive, more activated, the storefronts filled. I mean, we've met so many amazing people and so many great stories that it's like unfathomable to me that you would ever think that there's anywhere in the city that is like
just bad. You know what I mean? Like just
and like obviously we know that every major city, and obviously we know that Chicago has, I mean, the I would say like the economic divide is one, the racial divide, the red light, like there's so many factors that go into why certain things happen. But
we got heavy real quick on you.
We did. No, we did. But that's how it goes, though. And but I love it because like it's real. Like, to Sarah's point, the social welfare is huge in Chicago, and a lot of people don't know that. Like the mainstream news, Fox News, I can say it. It's my podcast, so I can say it. Places like Fox News, stuff like that. They love to paint it as this, but social welfare organizations are doing huge work on the south side, the west side of Chicago, in the black neighborhoods, the Hispanic neighborhoods. And people would never know about it unless you're actually in these neighborhoods. The way y'all are, like 77 community areas. First of all, I lived here my whole life. I'm sure I hit all 77, but to intentionally do all 77,
Yeah.
that's huge, man. So
I,
like,
I bet you most people have not been to Hegwish.
Yeah. Have
That
you
is.
been?
Have
Have
you
you,
been
yeah,
to? Oh, okay, okay.
yeah. People ain't never, people don't even know what Heswish is. You
yeah,
know what I'm
yeah,
saying? They don't even know what that is. That whole Riverdale area, all that
yeah,
southeast side.
yeah.
But so tell us about like y'all strategic planning when it came to hitting the 77 areas. And let me just say, y'all know, but just for those who are listening, there are 77 community areas in Chicago. That doesn't mean it's 77 neighborhoods. It's two
Right.
totally different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
There
saying?
There's a few
So
hundred
what was
neighborhoods.
the planning like when y'all was like, okay, look, we gonna hit all 77?
So initially, we just the concept was, yeah, we'll just go to all 77 of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't dawn on us that 77, if we do this once a week, is a year and a half.
That's a year.
And it didn't dawn on us until an interview with WGN. So I think the planning for us was, like I said, initially every 2 weeks, but we thought, like, hey, let's just go ahead and do each one. But over time, we kind of start seeing, how important we can be to Chicago and like how our voice is kind of being reached and how we can use our voice and platform. So, the planning part of it was easy. You know what I mean? We knew 77, eat food, talk history, have some fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, outside of that, we were just like, how do we like make this something where it could be tangible for people, to kind of like really engage them, like, and like get out here. So, then we start relying heavy on, we switch to video, right? Let's just show people that we're out here and this is not just us talking every week on microphone. We're actually here in the restaurants, in the community areas, and we're talking to people that are involved. And the planning for this next wave, that didn't start until I think December. We hit 77. We didn't start planning until like November, when we were like, oh damn, what do we do now? So it's almost over.
Yeah. So it's like now, okay, we hit all 77. So like, do we hit the specific neighborhoods within the 77?
Right. So to go back to the 77, when we were planning, we were like, okay, so we wanted to do some north side, west side, south side, north side, west side, south side,
like
and then you quickly realize there's way more south side community areas than there are north and west side. Yeah. So we started using a bingo machine that had 77 numbers, and we would just randomly draw a number,
and then whatever number
unless it had and then we would do that community area. So there was like no preference of like, we want to do
they're just doing north side, or they just doing south side.
You know how people are.
People gonna talk. So let's end that immediately. So we found that pretty early. I think I was gonna say third or fourth episode, we were like, all right, let's just mix it up,
randomize it, so that there's no.
And it was fun. I mean, you learn, even in that we learned, because we ran through all the north side quickly. You know what I mean? Like that was
because there's only there's only a few.
In hindsight, it's not a lot of those comparatively.
I would say maybe 20 community areas around the north side.
Right. And because it's only 56 south and west side. So, so there's only 21 north side. So we ran through those quickly. And then the podcast eventually the last few months became about the south side. Like it was more south side because it just naturally felt like that. But that was all the planning that we did. Now it's
a lot more intentional.
It's way more intentional
because now we're not doing just the community areas anymore. We'll hit multiple community areas in one episode, and what we'll do is like we'll answer the questions that came up during the first portion of the podcast. So we've done things like the brickyards. We've done things like
the green light. We're just talking about.
I like that episode.
We're gonna have an episode on like the first theaters in the city. We're going to it's some architecture, it's a lot more specific, I would say, and like less about the community area itself, but about all the stories that make Chicago so great.
Right. Like we all have questions about certain things, you know what I mean? Like, and some of them can be, very, straightforward. And some of them are like a rabbit hole and nobody ever finishes the question because it is a rabbit hole. And you're like, all right, well, I don't got time for that. Our goal is to go down that rabbit hole. You know what I mean? Like, because like once you go down that hole, there's more questions. And so there's more history and there's more things that you want to find out. And you start putting these pieces together. The best example is we did the Chicago why, right? We want to know why. Well, we know why, but like we wanted to explain why, you know, the municipal device is important in Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that random why that you see hidden all around the
city.
It's
like different type of architecture, like
yeah.
And like, why does it exist?
And in doing that, we were walking down the Wacker Street, Upper Wacker, and a lot of people, I don't know if you know or if anybody knows, we didn't know, but that was called Market Street at one point. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was called Market Street one point, and at one point that was the busiest street in all of Chicago. And so if you walk down the street, there's plaques that talk about everything on it. And so we were like, well, why don't we just do this as an episode? So, you know, it's things like that that we are finding now that, you know, the story of Chicago never ends. It's never going to end. Never going to end.
It's literally like a whole universe within itself. That's what I call it. And, you know, it's, you know, like you said, you go down these rabbit holes, you know. So I was a broadcasting major, film minor in college. And one of my papers, I had to do a paper on movie theaters, you know, early movie theaters, you know, Marcus Lowe, Adolf Zukar, all of those individuals. And of course, Chicago has a lot of movie palaces here, you know, like I had to touch on a Chicago theater, you know, Balaban and Katz, you know, the people that designed those theaters, you know, it's like those rabbit holes are really endless. And it just really shows you how like Chicago is kind of like really the center of the universe. So it's like, it's a universe within itself. It's just like the history is just endless. You know what I'm saying? And you know, so y'all was planning to do an episode on one thing, ended up doing an episode on another thing. And I just learned something because I did not know. I've heard the name Market Street before, I believe, but I did not know it was that though. I did not know that. So y'all just educated me on my own podcast, and I appreciate that. you know, because like the more you know, the more you don't know.
Right. And I mean, just imagine some of the things today. And this is a tangent. I'm sorry if it's taken up.
No, tangents are good.
So, you know, Jay-Z is like my personal favorite artist of all time.
Okay.
And he has in the song Picasso Baby, he said, Jeff Koons balloons, I just want to blow up. Right. And I don't know if you know who Jeff Koons is, right? But he makes the balloon art, you know, out of stainless steel.
Dogs.
Yeah. But diving deeper into that, Jeff Koons actually went to school in at the Art Institute of Chicago.
Didn't know that.
And not only that, but he was taught by a famous Chicagoan here that also is pretty famous. So I was going to make something today, actually, literally today, that said, hey, what is Jay-Z and the Art Institute of Chicago, how are they connected? Because I mean, there's stories about Chicago everywhere, and I bet you people didn't even know. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So
like I know who he was, but I didn't know. Or at least it probably slipped my mind that he went to the Art Institute. And it's funny, you look at old pictures of the Art Institute, it's literally this lonely building on Michigan Avenue in the middle of nowhere. And now it's like, obviously 2023 is all types of stuff developed around it, you know.
Everything.
Everything. Man, but you know, that's amazing. So Sarah, you're a chef, right? You're a chef. So tell us about how you got into that culinary world, and tell us why Chicago is the greatest food city in the world.
Oh, that's a great question. So first, I really don't like calling myself a chef because yes, I've worked in restaurants, but I feel like I'm not there yet. But I've been cooking my whole life.
You're a culinary genius. How about that?
There you go.
I love recipe development a lot. So, but and we actually just released an episode on food history in Chicago and why it's so important as a food city. And it actually goes all the way back to like indigenous foods and how they started in this area, and the swampy land being turned into cornfields and soy fields, and how that's so important. And all of the great industries that originated in Chicago, like sugar and salt and you know, the stockyards, like all of these great or major food categories that started in the city of Chicago. And they, if not started here, then they were transported through here because of the canal that went through here, or you know, towards So it's not just important in terms of like how people are being creative and creating foods here, and the amount of restaurants that you can visit, and the amount of Michelin restaurants you can visit, and things that are on the Michelin guide and all that stuff. But it's also important from its origin, because it paved the way for so many foods that we enjoy today.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
From different people of all races and nationalities. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, it's just crazy how, you know, you go Devon Street up in Albany Park, you know, like over by Western, and you could just eat literally around the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so
that's one of the most diverse zip codes in the country. And they always say like you can eat around the world in Chicago, and you really can. And in that Albany Park area, you could probably knock off quite a bit of countries off your list. So
yeah, real talk. And it's like, you know, I get into a lot of debates on social media about stuff, you know. And one debate I got into a couple months ago was with some guy on Twitter. He said that Philly got the best food in the country. I'm like, what? No, they don't. Look, I ain't never even heard nobody from Philly say that. You know what I mean? Like, nah, bro. And look, I only been to Philly one time. I admit this. But look, if I've been to your city one time, and if I get sick eating the thing that y'all known for, nah, y'all ain't it. Y'all ain't it.
Yeah, right. You can't be. You can't be it.
Can't be it. Can't be it. Like, I was down for the count after I ate that Philly cheesesteak that night. And I would never eat one again from Philly.
Damn.
Period.
That's rough.
It is. It was rough. This was like over 10 years ago, but yeah, I'm never doing it again.
It's a good spot over in Jackson, on Jackson, right in Greektown, that serves some good Philly cheesesteaks.
I think I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I've been to a spot in Greektown where I got a Philly cheesesteak from.
There's also, I think it's called Monty's.
Yeah, Monty's.
Right?
Yeah, Monty's.
One of our good friends, Byron. Okay. He runs the page, Shy Food Local. He has wonderful recommendations, by the way. But he took us there, and it was really good.
Yeah, it's very good.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to add that to the list. So yeah, man, like, you know, the food is, you know, a huge identity of Chicago, again, as we know. But also, as we know, it's the diversity of Chicago. That's a huge identity of Chicago. What are some things that y'all learned along the way since y'all started this podcast journey that obviously y'all didn't learn? I'm sure it's a lot of things that y'all have learned, but what's something that stands out for each one of you that you was like, wow, like, this is amazing?
Pullman for me. Pullman is, I think, you know, looking at it now, and I had going into it, that was one episode that I couldn't wait to get to, because to me, it's like literal archaeology right in our own land, right? And it did not disappoint when we went there for numerous different reasons, right? Yeah. We all know that Labor Day started here in Chicago because of, you know, because of Pullman, you know, because of that area, right? But you also got the Pullman Porters. There's that story, which is so important to so much of history in Chicago, and not just history in Chicago, but Black history across America. And to see those buildings, some of those buildings still there, you know what I mean? And like right there, it's like going to a foreign land and looking at the pyramids right there in front of you. That's, to me, like the best thing. And on top of that, it's Chicago has a national park, and that's it. A lot of people don't even know you can actually go, if you are a hiker and you want to knock off all the national parks. For those people that do it,
you gotta come here.
You can get your stamp out and get your stamp. You know what I mean? Like, so there's just so much going on in Pullman that is just, I mean, to me, it's just like the Egypt, you know,
and like you said, the Pullman Porters being so important to Black history across the country, you know, they were very important when it came to distributing the Chicago Defender in its early days, you know, and that's one thing that they had to do it on the low, because you know, they was trying to, like, cities was trying to outlaw that. They would like literally throw you in jail if they caught you selling the Defender or passing it on. So it's like they had to do it on the low, and I just love that energy. It's like, you know what I'm saying, like, here you go, bro, like, go ahead, read that. Come to Chicago.
What is it like? I was about to say, average paper was read by like 5 people.
Yeah, one paper. So it was so important. One paper on the train being passed around was read by like 5 to 6 people. So that thing had reach. You know what I mean? Like, one paper had reach, which is crazy.
And it all started in an apartment.
You know, Robert
Really?
Hackett, you know, I'm just
Yeah.
solving it in an apartment. You know what I'm saying? I still got the book back there somewhere. I ain't finished it. I'm like 3/4 through, but it's a thick old book though.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like, so yeah, Pullman is definitely one of those cities, well, it's not cities, one of those towns,
Yeah.
neighborhoods that's like the history is just so rich. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Very rich.
Very rich. And you know, like I read a headline the other day that said Elon Musk is trying to start a employee town for all his employees. I'm like, yeah, we did that before.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah.
Come to
A
Pullman and
couple
see what
times.
happened. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Yeah. I don't know about that, bro. But
Yeah.
yeah, Pullman definitely a great option. What about you, Sarah?
Oh my God, it's so hard to pick. I honestly don't know, but I would say like one of the things that stood out is how important immigrants were to the story of Chicago. And I don't know why, but that kind of like is close to home for me. My dad moved here for college. I moved here. I don't know. I moved here by choice. I know a lot of people that moved to, you know, from Eastern Europe and stuff like that. The German, the Polish, the Irish that moved here, or even the Arabs and from Southeast Asia. Some of them wasn't by choice. Some of them was looking for better opportunities. But I think like the importance of them to everything that has happened in the city was really cool to learn about. Yeah. I would say that probably.
And it's ongoing learning.
Right.
Yeah. We continually learn how immigrants really shaped Chicago, right?
Yeah.
I would
They
say
get the job done.
Yeah, I would say, you know, also, and just a bonus for I think both of us. I can talk for both of us on this one. Bronzeville is just.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like
that is.
I think Bronzeville is one of those places that you hear about it so much in the news, and so you automatically be like, "Oh, this is a great place," right? So people that don't know Bronzeville will automatically assume that it's a great place. However, when you go and you research and you actually are there and you learn about Bronzeville, it becomes even better. It's like, and so to me, it's almost like, man, what a time to be alive in those times. You know what I'm saying? Like, I couldn't imagine being in Bronzeville, Black metropolis, and like just living as much of the dream as we could live. And everybody that came through there, to me, it's just like, it's one of the community areas that has the most historic landmarks in it. You know what I mean? Like it's got, I mean, we all know the 6 that are like mainstays, you know, but you know, there's so many other things in Bronzeville that are like so historic. I don't know. Bronzeville that's up there with Pullman to me too. So.
Yeah, man. My grandma, she lived in Bronzeville my entire life. So like I was down there spending a lot of time as a kid, you know, Pilgrim Baptist Church, you know, I remember when it was, you know, fully erect and, you know, and all of that. It used to have a blue cross. You know, I remember seeing that blue cross from my grandma's apartment building at night. And then obviously, you know, then it burnt down. I think what they're making it now, like a museum now.
Yeah, it's like a museum. Yep.
Yeah, they're making it a museum now. Yeah, man, like the history there is definitely crazy. And I'm still in awe, you know, of so many things that I see in Bronzeville that's still there from when I was a kid. Like I'm only 34, but I'm at the age where I can see the neighborhood has changed, but at the same time, some things have still stayed the same. Like a lot of things have stayed the same. For example, it's my grandfather stayed on 46 of King Drive, and it's y'all seen it, and the name is escaping me right now, but it's an old insurance company building on King Drive. Yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
The name is escaping me though.
Yes, it's losing me. I don't know. We know so many different things.
And but it's still there. And it's like you could tell that thing had been vacant for at least 20, 30 years before I was born.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I'm
And it still ain't been touched.
What I'm sitting there like, because we've been to it.
I'm gonna have to Google that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. God, it's a very important
somebody watches, they already know the name. They shout.
I know. God dog. We done been some everywhere.
It's I'm gonna try to Google it. But yeah, it's right there though. And I'm like, how come ain't nobody touched this building? Like, what's the stories behind this building? I did some research on it at one point, and I know it had changed hands multiple times, you know, back in the day. But, you know, I can't find it. Like, I'm trying to look for it on Google, but yeah, I'm like, what's the story behind this building? How come ain't nobody touched it?
Right.
You know, like, is it landmark status? Like, what's the deal? Like,
that's literally how we come up with the topics for the podcast.
Mammoth Life and Accident Insurance Company.
Yep. There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's well. I don't know if it's gonna show
It's,
up.
it's blurred out, but we
Yeah. So like, how come ain't nobody touch? So that's how y'all come up with the inspiration
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We'll
behind
be
y'all
driving
episodes.
or like on the bus or something. I'll be like, what is that? And then I'll like look it up on my phone and it's a rabbit hole. And then we're like,
Yeah.
wow, we gotta talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, we told people, you listen to the podcast, we tell people, look with your eyes up and look down sometimes. Just like look at your surroundings because there's plaques on a lot of these buildings that tell you what this building was. And
Yeah.
I think that's the coolest part about when you are walking around downtown.
Yeah.
You can or not downtown, around Chicago, around town, you can just literally look almost anywhere, and some building is like, historic for some reason or another. And I think they just brought up the list of Chicago's 7 most endangered buildings, right? And that list is something that, in all honesty, I didn't really care about before the podcast. And now I say don't care because I never paid attention. It wasn't my world. You know what I mean? I was like, damn, don't tear down the Chicago building.
Yeah.
But now, but now it's like, well, we have so many buildings that are like historic and landmark. And if you do some research, what happened in that building, maybe keep it. You know what I mean? Like, so now it's like things like that is where we are really like, all right, let's bring some focus to what that is and why it's important to the community and to the people, around. It's a rabbit hole for sure.
It's always a rabbit hole, man.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things like you don't even realize until you get older. So back to Bronzeville, just real quick.
Yeah. Yep.
I remember when I was a kid, my uncle here used to take me on walks around the neighborhood with him while he was running errands. He loved walking and running errands with my grandma, and he'd do it for her neighbors as well. So like I was his buddy, his companion on some of these trips, and he would walk me to the Douglas Tomb on 35th Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a kid, you're like, oh, okay, nice statue. But the older you get, you realize, I'm like, oh, Stephen Douglas. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like, when they was tearing down the Confederate statues all throughout the South a couple years
Why
ago.
not? Why are you keeping that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we don't have any Confederate statues per se here, but we definitely got statues of racist men.
Yeah, right. We did I think our third or fourth episode, we did right in front of that statue.
Yeah. And then when we did the episode with the founding of the 77, like why the 77 community areas even exist the way they do with the University of Chicago. So the University of Chicago was founded by Douglas, right?
Yeah, the original one.
And it was the original. Then Rockefeller bankrolled.
Yeah.
And then there was like a stone from the original building in the new campus, but they chose to take it out. They were like, we want no association whatsoever with the guys. So
so they took that out.
That's pretty cool.
That's real.
Yeah.
I mean, given University of Chicago's racist history, that's
and they acknowledge it.
That's the best thing.
They recognize that, like, yes, we have racist roots,
right? And trying to change that, is that's big. That's big for them because they are. I mean, important to Chicago. Like, regardless of whatever we want to say, that's important. You know what I mean? Like, they created all this.
Yeah. You take away University of Chicago, you take it away. It's gonna be a huge vacuum.
Yeah,
not just on the South Side, but Chicago. Period. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, huge vacuum. But yeah, I did not know that though. About the stone that was present at the University of Chicago. I did not know that. I'm glad they took it out though. But yeah, like but those are things that people don't know, right? Bronzeville is predominantly Black neighborhood. Regardless of how much gentrification has occurred, it's still very Black Chicago there.
Right.
And the entire the community area is named after a racist senator that wanted Black people to still be in bondage. So those are things that people don't know, but they need to know because it helps, just with your awareness of the city that you live in and the city that you love,
Right.
Yeah, man. And the work y'all are doing with this podcast is huge. So like what is y'all vision long term? Y'all ain't got to give no secrets. Don't give away no top secrets on here. But like, what are some visions long term? So y'all did the 77, right? Now y'all intentional with different type of content. How do y'all see 77 Flavors growing in the next
I used to be very confident answering this question, but now I almost don't like answering it for one reason only, is that I feel like by answering it, we're limiting ourselves, because the opportunities that we've gotten from this podcast are stuff that I would have never imagined or said that are like goals for us. So there are some things that are going to we've already worked on or completed that are going to be become public. We can't talk about them right now, but they're going to become public over the next few months, that like in my wildest dream I would have never thought were real. But some things that we can talk about is like we're working on a guidebook, an interactive guidebook, to kind of walk you through the 77 community areas. Our YouTube channel is it's vlog style more now than it used to be just like the podcast itself. Now it kind of like mirrors the podcast episode, so it's not exactly the same. It's more of a vlog style. We more want it to feel like you're watching a 20-minute TV show. And who knows where that will go. Like we're just building a portfolio right now when it comes to that. We've partnered with World Business Chicago. We're working on some events in the Hancock building at the Chicago Food Stop. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We're working on some events at the Chicago Food Stop, and our purpose there is to kind of like bring more diversity to the food stop. In general is meant to bring more diversity to the Magnificent Mile, because obviously it's a lot of like huge businesses that are owned by large restaurant groups, and like a small business would never have the opportunity to be in there. So like these events that are being put on in there, and the little kiosks that are in the space, are meant to provide small businesses free space for them to be in there. And it's funded by federal dollars. So we also work on creating some events. We're actually doing a Black Metropolis event on the 8th of April.
Yep.
And it's going to have a speaker from Bronzeville. We're going to have a jazz band. We're going to have a restaurant, and then a non-alcoholic winery. It's like a full day event. So we've been doing a lot of those. We did a pizza day. We did
Chicago's birthday.
Stockyards. We did Chicago's birthday. So
that was recent. I saw that.
Yeah.
So it's just,
I don't know what else.
That's
a lot.
There's a lot going on.
That's a lot
going on.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to answer the question. I think holistically, we just want to advocate for the city, right? We want to advocate for the people of the city. Yeah. Maybe not the city, but to us, the people is what we want to advocate for. You know, like there's missed opportunities on the south and west side. You know what I mean? Like there's people all over the north side that deserve a fair shake. You know, and that need enlightenment and kind of light cast on. So we just want to kind of be the bridge. When you think of when somebody out of town thinks of Chicago, they reference us, reference us, people that have been on the ground, a real unfiltered, undoctored opinion and thought process that we can show you tangible proof of things that we learn. Yes. That's all we really want. You know what I mean? So
and heavy on the unfiltered, because we're one of like the few podcasts that we don't belong to a production company. So like honestly, a lot of our opinions and our experiences are our opinions and our experiences. So we don't have a producing team, we don't have editors. It's just Dario and I every single day.
We keep it
and I love that, because like I said earlier, I was like, this is my podcast, so I could say it's Fox News that says a lot. Like I love that. Like, I just feel like, okay, so I'm on record with saying that I feel like podcasts are one of the greatest things to happen to humans, but it's also one of the worst things to happen to humans.
Yeah.
Because people can say anything egregious, but at the same time, it's just another platform to be monetized by bigger companies, right? So it's like the barrier to entry is still low, but at the same time, bigger companies can still come in and say, hey, do this for us, but hey, don't say that.
Right.
So it's like a double-edged sword. But I say that to say just the freedom of creativity is so important, especially when you're doing good stuff, not when you're like intentionally trying to speak out hate speech to hurt others, but when you're doing enlightening things, that freedom of creativity is so important. And I salute and I respect it from one independent to another, because that's important. That's important. Like, the big corporations don't really understand it. They understand money, but they don't understand the ground zero perspective of the community, the city,
Right.
and the people that live in these communities and
Right.
cities, you know, and
Right.
that's what you two understand, you know.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
fact that y'all are basically y'all got this machine going. You know, y'all
Right.
got this machine going. And Chicago's a huge city. It's a huge diverse city with different opinions, different backgrounds. But y'all were able to pull that together through culinary and just through history. You know, y'all
Yeah.
was able
People
to
love
weave that
food.
together. Yeah,
They'll
people
listen,
love food.
Yeah.
they'll listen to, they think they're listening for the food, but then they eventually start listening for the history. But they might have come in for the food review and then they stay for the history.
And then you leave with some nuggets like, damn, I didn't know that about Chicago. Or, you know.
And
Yeah.
we're actually, what last thing we're working on right now is that's launching in April is our new newsletter, and it won't be, you know, a weekly newsletter or a daily newsletter. It'll probably be like a bi-weekly thing.
Okay.
And you know, it'll involve even more stories, even more like activities, things you can do around the city in different community areas that you might not hear, that might not be on like your main Instagram page of like what's going on. But yeah,
it's fun. What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. And, you know, y'all got a lot going on. Y'all might need to bring in a team eventually.
oh my God.
Yeah, I know. Look.
Eventually, like now, yeah.
Yeah.
Because y'all got a lot, man. I mean, you know, it's two of y'all.
Yeah.
But you know, the newsletter, the live events,
Yeah.
know, everything else that you mentioned, I'm like, woo, like
Yeah, I
y'all
know.
a street team.
I know, man. Look, we are definitely not opposed to it. The more people we can get on board with spreading the word about Chicago and learning and the restaurants and eating, let's bring it.
You know, subscribe to our podcast so we can get paid more,
Yeah.
so that we can hire someone to help.
So we can do some more. Yeah.
Yeah. That's that's huge. Subscribe and share. You know what I'm saying?
That's it.
Yeah, man. You know, so this is just dope. You know, again, like I said at the top of the episode, you know, I was sucked in from the very beginning because I'm a history nerd myself. I've always loved history, and the older I've gotten, the more I fell in love with Chicago history, and then obviously the surrounding areas in Illinois history. You know,
right?
Like I think it was you, Sarah, that said that Chicago used to be a swamp area. A lot of people don't know this. All of this used to be swamp area, like Cook County. You know, most of all of this was swamp area. You know, like I went to high school out of Markham. Well, I lived in Markham during my high school years, and you know, it wasn't until after I graduated college that I discovered, oh, Markham used to be a swamp. Yeah. That's why no houses in Markham ain't got basements.
Yeah,
that's literally why. Because like when I was a kid, seriously, this might sound weird, but it's the truth. I thought a basement was a sign of, oh, y'all got money. You know what I'm saying? I thought
that's true.
I thought it was like, okay, you got money if you got a basement.
Don't let it be finished. Don't let it.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? You got a couch down there. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that. Like only one of my friends had a basement growing up, just one, and you could tell like their house wasn't new, but it was a newer house, right? Yeah. Majority of the houses in Markham were built like in the 1950s and 60s.
Yeah.
They ain't put basements in them because it was nothing but swampland. And I'm like, oh, that's why. Yeah. This is literally why. And then like they just built that Amazon facility out there. Yep. And they built it on swampland. And that's why it was never developments on that land where they built that Amazon facility. Now obviously it's Amazon, so I guess they had the money to spend to try to do what they gotta do. But yeah, all of this stuff makes sense. So a lot of people don't know that Chicago, a lot of South Cook County, all of this was just swampy land.
Yeah. We talked about it on the podcast about how the right around that area is where the highest point in Chicago is, and it's only 100 feet above sea level. Yeah. So, but that part is actually, and it's was it Blue Island, which is right outside, and that was named because of another area that's in Chicago. But it just didn't get annexed to the city. And that happens a lot. And that's the highest point in the city, right over there.
Wow, I did not know that. It's very believable. Obviously, it's the truth, you know what I'm saying? But it's believable when you so here's another fact, you know, Illinois is the second flattest state in the country. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't know that either. You know, Florida is the flattest. You know, I ain't never been to Florida. I'm like one of the few.
That's about to be the most underneath too. Yeah.
But then right after that is Illinois. Illinois is the flattest state outside of Florida in the country. So like when you take that into account, it just makes more and more sense why Chicago is the way it is. You know, like I said, Blue Island, Stony Island, you know,
Right.
all these islands, they was like literal
That's
islands.
it.
You know what I'm saying?
That's it.
They was
Yeah.
literal islands back in the day, man. But yeah, you know, see, we can go all day. Like this is amazing. That's why I wanted to get y'all on the podcast. For real. So like I got 2 questions for y'all, 2 little trivia questions. I'm sure y'all might know them. Y'all probably know them. You know, because I have a thing on my podcast called the SAT,
Okay.
SoCHiology Awareness Test, where I ask Chicagoans different questions about different things. And since it's March, March Madness, basketball,
God.
Yeah.
all of that. I'm gonna ask y'all this: where was the first high school basketball game played?
Ooh, the first high school basketball game. I can tell you where
Country.
the what's that?
In the country.
In the country. Oh shoot, I have no clue. That's a good ass question. I can tell you where the Harlem Globetrotters started. They started at high school in Bronzeville, right by Harold Washington Center.
Facts. They absolutely did. They absolutely did. Yep.
But that's not the answer we're looking for.
And they not Harlem. They Chicago.
Yeah, right. It's Chicago.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so the very first high school basketball game in the country ever was played right here in Chicago, between Morgan Park Academy and the West Side YMCA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
1893.
That's interesting. 1893?
1893.
World's Fair. There you go. World's Fair.
Wow.
There was a lot of stuff going on that year.
Yep. Yeah. Chicago was a busy year that year.
Yeah, it was a busy year. That was a comeback.
Everybody was outside that summer.
You know?
Everybody was outside.
Everybody. Hey, that's a
Everybody was
good question.
Yeah. I had just recently did an episode on that. And you know, because I had covered I'm a professional photographer by trade. I said that. And I was covering the state semis, and you know, I had interviewed a few people about that. I just learned that myself last year.
Wow. That's amazing. That's a good one.
Now I always knew that March Madness started here.
Yeah.
Y'all know that? Yeah.
That I know.
Yeah, I always knew that March Madness started here, but I did not know that. So I'm like, wow, like Chicago really started all this basketball shit. You know,
We started a lot of shit. We started
a lot of shit. You know,
we kicked it off a lot of times.
You know, we kicked off the Harlem Globetrotters, kicked off March Madness, first high school basketball game. We got the GOAT. The GOAT played here.
Yes.
You know, I love to piss people off by saying the NBA hasn't had an MVP since 2011. So the last MVP was here. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So yeah, man. So yeah, that's a nice nugget. So my next question is, and I'm sure y'all most likely know this one, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. In light of election season here in Chicago, we're not asking nobody who they're voting for, but Chicago, as we know, is a Democratic city through and through.
Yep.
Illinois is Democratic because Chicago is Democratic.
Yep.
Who was the last Republican mayor of Chicago?
Oh shit.
Not.
I wasn't living here, so that doesn't.
Yeah. Right. That's
he wasn't either. I don't think he was born. Yeah, you wasn't born yet.
I wasn't.
Damn, it's been that long.
It's been a long time.
Was it Belandic?
Nope.
No, who was it?
Big Bill Thompson.
Oh wow.
Bill Thompson. Yeah, he served 2 terms actually. His first term was from 1915 to 1923. Then the second term was 1927 and 1931.
Oh, wow. He was the mayor during some very radical times.
He was.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, some very corrupt, crazy times. He was the last Republican. Since then, it's been Democrat.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. Well, I'm not going to get into it, but like,
I know where you're going. I know where you're going. I know where you're going with it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah, that's basically that.
We'll see. Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah. But you know, he did live in Chicago at least.
Yeah. Hey, look.
At least he lived in the city.
Hey, I'm just saying. Saying.
That should be a prerequisite.
You know,
you want to run? How are you going to be a mayor? Never mind.
Yeah.
Like anybody can rent some. I mean, you know what? Anybody can rent an apartment. I'm just saying,
Right. Anybody use the hood pass to go to school somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But we it's nice out there in the heights.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna stop. But yeah. William Hale Thompson was the last Republican long time ago. Then after that, it's just been a series of Democrats.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's a good fact because we didn't know. You know what I mean? Like that's
and people don't understand just how deep that Democratic machine is in Chicago.
It's deep. It's deep, like
deeper than any city, deeper than New York, deeper than LA. It's deep.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a very important time for Chicago. Anybody listening, like it's an important time for our city. So it's only been 3 times that we only had a 1-term mayor like that. So so that's tough,
Yeah, like tonight, and then I think 2 of them was women.
Yeah, right. They both were women. Yeah,
it's tough. Yeah,
but two women in there.
That's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, which were they both were the first at their times, too. So
yeah, then Chicago was like, okay, like
right.
It was like, like damn, that's tough. But yeah, man.
That was my conversation with Sara and Dario, the co-hosts of 77 Flavors of Chicago. When you get a chance, please subscribe to their podcast. I included the link in the bio description of this episode. When you listen to 77 Flavors of Chicago, you will be entertained, you will learn, and you will be enthused and amazed by that chemistry and that genuineness of their love for this great city that we know, Chicago. If you enjoyed this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on right now, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc., leave a 5-star review and a comment. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to our sister podcast, Mogul Motivation, from True Stories Media.